I don't know what you just said.
I think he's technically said 5 of the hands.
And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Monday, December 2nd. I am Josh Engleman. I think I said my last name correctly. It sounded weird. Whatever. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We are brought to you by the Cyber Monday promo. Cyber24 is the promo code. We'll talk about that in a little bit. 4-game slate ahead of us. And we still have a wealth of question marks. Not just Q tags, but unknowns for basically every game that exists. So should be fun to break down. I've ran some sims before we got started, got all the data updated. So I think we're ready to go and dig into a very unique 4-game slate. So you guys hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Spags, how was your Thanksgiving weekend?
It was good. Did a lot of stuff. We tried to go to a tree lighting festival when it was like 30 degrees out. And I told my wife, like, I'm gonna hate this and Luca's gonna hate this. And we went within 5 minutes. Luca was like, I don't want to be here. Like, all right, awesome. So that was a good start to things. But this is a weird NBA slate. I feel like even before the show was going through the prop markets and using one of the tools where it's like I have to highlight the games and it's like, oh, questionable player in this game, questionable player in this game. Have to keep making caveats. I feel like we don't really know the slate in front of us. Like we're in a brand new relationship with somebody, and it's like, oh, this slate could be fun. Seems like a good time, but it's like you don't know what you're gonna get if all the Boston guys get ruled out, if Austin Reeves gets ruled out. Like there's a lot of questionable things left here. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it after the Josh Engleman trade podcast this morning on the Strategy Show.
Yes, I did go deep dive into the status of Jalen Green for about 20 minutes today, which was exactly what I would like to do each day. Way more than what I
I
actually did,
enjoyed your
which is
takes on it. I mean, that's the kind of thing, right? Your basketball brain can come out. I didn't know the Daryl Morey thing either, that Josh is followed by Daryl Morey, sent him a DM
yeah.
once being like, love your work, man. Great takes on China. And then Daryl Morey's like,
That's
yeah,
yes,
man.
that's exactly how it went down. Those were the exact messages. No, that's a true statement. Let me see if I can find it.
That's pretty sick, honestly. Like not Greg Hill, George Kittle follows me from my Barstool days. He sent me screenshots of the Tinder roundup I used to do back there. That's
Yeah.
probably the best one I have. But Daryl Morey, if you're like you love basketball and you're a data nerd, I feel like that's there. That's similar.
Some like Dagestani light heavyweight in the UFC followed me like 6 years ago. That one was really weird. But yeah, I sent him a DM August 19th, 2021, 7:24 a.m. That's when I woke up and saw it. And he responded. Thank you, Josh. Very appreciated. Go Sixers.
Huh, that's cool. So do you think he was just watching like Stokastic streams and like this guy's got some good thoughts, or just did you have good takes on Twitter and he like
I'm
paused?
assuming he saw a couple tweets because I'm pretty sure he definitely followed Adam. He definitely followed, I'm pretty sure he followed Lofty. He hit a couple that day. Um, he hit a couple that day,
That's
but I
nice.
have
I
no
didn't.
idea why. No idea why. Whatever I said in that time too was, if I remember correctly, like not complimentary of like probably Embiid if I remember correctly. Certainly not of like his personnel choices because I'm Team Morey through and through.
Maybe it was your Embiid bet, like with Laffy that got him going. He's like, oh, these
Is that
guys
real news?
mouth tattoos. What now?
Sam Hauser out.
Oh,
White in, Tatum in.
oh, that's why the line was weird. Sam Hauser wasn't gonna.
Jalen Brown still questionable.
Oh, that's
All
stupid.
right. Well, that happened, I guess. That's not how that's annoying. I wish that would have broke a little bit different. That got worse somehow. That got
More
worse.
Drew Peterson minutes coming up.
I, Jordan Walsh. I don't know. We'll get to Boston in a bit, but first, let's get to the New Orleans Pelicans and the Atlanta Hawks. Pels are 8.5 point dogs in Atlanta, 230.5 total. So there's 2 games with 230 totals and 2 games that are sub 220. That kind of stands out. The 230 games both have 100 pace for me. The two non 300 or 230 games are around 95. So giant gap in pace and in offense between these games for the Pelicans today. A lot of the standard issue guys that aren't going to be playing aren't going to be playing. We should be pretty used to that for the Pels at this point. We've got no Jose Alvarado, no Jordan Hawkins, no Zion Williamson. Doubtful on Herb Jones. Would really like to see him get back. And then Brandon Ingram is questionable once again. I believe he's missed 4 straight. So the assumption for right now is that Brandon Ingram is in based on the data. I want everybody to know that. We're not really getting much ownership coming into the Pelicans on the DraftKings side. 20% to Trey Murphy, sub 10 for everybody else. Now, it's a very different story on FanDuel. DeJounte Murray is $400 cheaper. He's 35% owned on FanDuel. Brandon Ingram is $500 cheaper on FanDuel. He's 15% owned. Everybody else on the FanDuel side is single digits. So I think we could start with the Pelicans with this question. Is there anybody you like regardless of Brandon Ingram's status?
Trey Murphy, I'm getting a decent amount of, actually getting him in about a third of lineups so far. Now, granted, I didn't really knock usage rates around, just kind of letting them settle in a pecking order based on where these guys have been. Trey Murphy's usage absolutely has to fall from 25%-ish. If you're going to have Ingram back in, Murray back in, McCollum in as well. So that's something I am kind of noting mentally. But I do think Trey Murphy, to me, getting him 25%-ish feels about right to me if the field's going to be there 19. He's been producing well, about a fantasy point per minute on the year. Minutes should be there for him if he's going to play today, about 33.5 minutes. So I'm okay with that. DeJounte Murray as well, I think looks pretty strong. Desperately due for some positive regression in his shooting on the year. 40.4% true shooting despite 31% usage, 31% assist rate with that as well, averaging 1.13 fantasy points per minute. He starts hitting some shots, which I think he should be able to in revenge game against Atlanta. I like the spot for Murray no matter what, but those guys are it for me. I got a couple shares of Eve Missy. I don't really care about that. I think Murray and Murphy would be my two calls here.
Yeah, I've got 30% of Trey Murphy right now. He just looks incredible. 6,200 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel. Very different play across both sites. I would argue that he's a little bit under-owned on FanDuel just for the size of what this slate is, given he's probably playing, 32 plus minutes in a competitive matchup today. So regardless of the status of Ingram, Trey Murphy on DraftKings is going to be the guy that I have the most of. It won't even be close. I got one share of Murray, one share of CJ, one share of Ingram. That all seems fine to me. They're not guys that I wouldn't want to get to if they were in. If Brandon Ingram is out, does that unlock anything for you? Because I'm not entirely sure like Murray looks that much better. I don't think CJ looks that much better. And then everybody else has just had price increases for so long because everybody's been out that I'm not entirely sure that we unlock anything new if Brandon Ingram ends up out.
See, I think I would get more Murray and more Murphy as it is because these guys look good kind of as they
Sure.
are. Murray, I'm already getting 15% of. If I had to guess if Ingram were out, I'm probably looking at more like a third of my lineups would be
Sure.
with him. So, but I get what you're saying. Like you're just going to fill minutes with somebody else who's maybe going to take a little bit of usage away and it maybe what comes out in the wash. But Ingram just dominates the ball so much this year. I
Yeah.
mean, 60% of the possessions are going his way between usage and assist rate. So I think that matters. And two, the matchup against Atlanta. I know, Josh, we both roll our eyes at revenge game stuff. There is a thing that enough player podcasts have talked about that when you leave somewhere you like a lot, like Atlanta, like Houston, these guys do come back a little bit of oomph. Murray, I think there's already a case for him anyway, but I think for the YouTube chat, if you guys love revenge game narratives, and I know you do because I always see the chats, like Murray, I think would be like a smash play, getting more usage, not having to deal with Ingram out there. Like he could put up 50 and 10 here, and it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. He might not want to leave Atlanta. I think it's a very realistic possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to undersell the usage bump that CJ and Murray can take on when Ingram if Ingram happens to be out. I'm just looking at it like, all right, I got to reallocate 30 to 32 minutes, something like that for Ingram coming back off of this Q tag. But I just like Elfrid Payton sort of already priced where he should be. Javonte Green, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, like they're either not good per minute guys or sort of already priced for what they're going to get. Brandon Boston's already still 5,600 and not that good per minute. Don't think it really matters for Messi or Tice. Maybe they bring one of those other idiots like Reeves or Kane back into the rotation. But
Reeves is not an idiot. How dare you? He played like a true gentleman that one night. Him and Jalen Tyson, the DFS duel of the ages. It's fantastic.
yeah, like I said, those idiots.
Rude.
So yeah, I don't ultimately whether we get Ingram in or not, at least from a DraftKings perspective, I don't think that we're going to see like overwhelming ownership coming into the Pelicans even in this spot. And Trey Murphy is definitely going to be the guy that leads the charge. Now, Murray on FanDuel will certainly look even better than the 36% ownership that he's getting. Ingram is pulling 16 on FanDuel. That's got to go away and go somewhere. You'll get a little bit of a bump to CJ, probably a little bit of a bump to ownership for Murphy, but they don't really have any like super advantageous pricing either. Boston doesn't have the MPE. Jeremiah Robinson Earl doesn't have the MPE. I expected the Pelicans to look a little bit more interesting than this, but there are quite a few other teams on this slate that are going to be catching our eye, like the Atlanta Hawks, for instance. Their opponent on DraftKings, it's a very different story. 30% ownership coming into Jalen Johnson, 25 to Trey, 15 to Hunter, 15 to Bogdanovich, close to 10 on Okongwu and Capella. Now, there's not as much coming in on FanDuel. Jalen Johnson is $900 more expensive there, and he's still the most owned guy for the Hawks at 15%. Trey is $700 more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. He's around 10%. Everybody else is in single digits. What do you like here for Atlanta? Because I've got a bunch of these guys.
So I'm getting a lot less Trey Young. I think because I do like Murray a little bit more. Do like also Tyler Hero coming up in the next game a lot with no Jimmy Butler in that spot. I actually would have Hero pretty close to Trey Young straight away in a projection. I'm getting more Hero and less Trey Young, so I'm only getting 7%. The top 150 lineups I ran in the sim before the show. Getting a lot more Jalen Johnson, and frankly, to me, I think this is something that's been the case for me in every slate, and I usually feel pretty good about it every slate. Jalen Johnson and Trey Young to me are very similar plays projection-wise for the most part now. Trey Young's seeding usage this year also, he's a little bit cold in shooting, but honestly about where Trey Young should be. But generally, just the usage being up for Jalen Johnson, assist rate being up for Jalen Johnson as well. Like Trey's great. He's assisting out of his mind this year, playing more of a true distributor role, but the usage being down for him is not helping him out that much. So if you knock his usage rate compared to what it's been historically, this year he's at 27.2%, still assisting a ton. But, you have Jalen Johnson rebounding 15% of the rebounds out there, a 23% usage rate, 23% assist rate, a 1.2 fantasy points a minute. Trey Young also at 1.2. I'd rather just have Jalen Johnson for cheaper playing power forward. So I'm getting 44% Jalen Johnson today, which is a lot. I'm sure it's going to move around if there's Boston value that opens up or something like that. But Jalen Johnson, to me, one of the best plays. And I think Trey Young, quietly, one of my biggest fades on the slate.
Interesting. I'm with you on Jalen Johnson. I got to 35%. Happy to have him. I do still I'm meeting the field on Trey at 25%. Although I do think he's a little overowned. I'm not stoked that I have him, and maybe that changes if Jaylen Brown ends up out and other things move around. But I would have expected to have a little bit less of him. I'm wondering if there's just enough value that you can get to more of that like high 7, 8K range than I thought you could. I wonder if that's what's causing it. I'm actually getting 2x the field of Bogdanovich right now. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, 4,600. Makes me nervous for sure. He has not been good. Missed the last one, playing today. Got up to 28 minutes on the 25th. He's been sitting in the last 4 games, 24, 26, 28, 26. I went 25 for today. I guess in theory, he could probably play a couple extra minutes there, but you're getting a good price. You're getting the perfect position on a day where you can use it. Maybe the new value that pops up takes something like this away, but he's actually tied with Jalen Johnson for me for exposure. How do you feel about Bogdanovich?
I am low on him. I'm getting 3% of him. I do have him lower projected. I have him at 21.6 compared to the 23 projection that Stokastic has in about 25.1 minutes for him. So I'm low. The rate's been down for him, only averaging 0.82 fantasy points a minute. I get going there, though, on a slate with the MPE, shooting guard, small forward, and the fact that he's probably due for some positive regression as well. So Josh probably right about this take. I'm just low on him for today. I'm getting an amount of Hunter, getting 11% of him instead. So I'm okay with that. Still under the field on them. To me, on the Hawks, it's kind of Jalen Johnson or bust. But I could see your logic for Bogdanovich, even Okongwu, getting 8% of him. I don't hate that, but nothing here feels like a priority to me besides Jalen Johnson.
Yeah, I got 10 of Hunter as well, 10 of Okongwu. I'm with you there. I agree. Jalen Johnson to me is very clearly the best option from Atlanta. I would say probably Trey 2, Hunter 3, Bogdanovich 4 for me, but I'm getting more of Bogdanovich and less of Hunter. And I think it's just because of that guard forward eligibility that just on a 4-gamer, like any flexibility that you can get like that is really, really valuable because you need that ability to move some parts around if you can. Dyson Daniels, on the other hand, not going to be a name that I think either one of us are going to be saying. 3% owned on DraftKings, 7% owned on FanDuel. Even though he's $500 more expensive on FanDuel, I'd probably rather him there, but he looks like the toughest one of anybody on Atlanta to actually click on.
Yeah, revenge game, turnover upside, great for FanDuel, but yeah, to me, I didn't get a single share in a 150 set of Dyson Daniels, and I often don't, but especially today, it feels like I'm not getting them.
I appreciate you guys. Chat, Fistula. Don't need the announcements on guys that were already probable. Trey was in regardless. So was Bogdan Bogdanovic. Well, that's Pels and Hawks. Schedule for the rest of the day is easy. You guys can hear it after you press the like button. I won't wait that whole time. I'll just assume you guys do it. So, NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Very simple. Greg and Eric taking you all the way up until 7:30. Then there's no messing around. NFL Live Before Lock starts at 7:30. You get Laffy and you get Makajeski. And by 8 o'clock, this NBA slate is done. We are done and locked. 7:30, 2 starts. 8 o'clock, 2 starts. We can wash our hands of it all. We can go, well, you guys can go watch Monday Night Football. I'll go watch basketball or the second episode of Silo Season 2. Got to get into that one yet. So if anybody's watching that, no spoilers. No spoilers. You ready to talk this Miami-Boston game that somehow looks awful and awesome at the exact same time? It's really a tough one. So Miami's an 8.5-point dog, at least as of right now. We'll see what happens based on the news that came out. 217.5 total was the lowest total on today's slate. You mentioned it before. I will mention it again. No Jimmy Butler for this one. He is out with right knee soreness. We also have no Josh Christopher, no Nikola Jovic, no Kevin Love, no Josh Richardson, no Khalil Ware. I think I missed the Ware news. I'm going to have to take him out. Terry Rozier available. Drew Smith available. Thin herd here for Miami. And that is resulting in 45% ownership coming into Tyler Hero, over 50 on FanDuel. Bam is 30 on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. Terry Rozier is 15 on DraftKings, 35 on FanDuel. Haywood Highsmith is 10 on both sites. Duncan Robinson's basically 10 on both sites. Jaime Jaquez is 14 on DraftKings and 30 on FanDuel. Got a lot of ownership coming into the Miami Heat across both sites. Where do you want to start?
I'm just crazy about Bam and Hero today. I think they're the strongest plays on the slate. I think too, if they somehow stay competitive against Boston here, push this one to the fourth quarter, and you have multiple Boston guys. I think how you get there is probably Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. So going back to last year, court time without Butler, court time without Kyle Lowry, court time without Kevin Love, like the guys who kind of take some usage away. Bam Adebayo, 1.2 fantasy points per minute, 25% usage, 21% assist rate, 17% rebound rate, everything a little bit better than usual. So that makes him look pretty good. Hero, 27.4% usage, 8.4% rebound rate, 25% assist rate, 1.13 fantasy points per minute. So give him a little boost as well as where he's been this year. I think these guys are the pathway to this game, hanging in and even within 10 points at least. I think is them having a good day. So I'll be crazy over on Adebayo and Hero. I definitely feel like I have Adebayo over projected. If Josh wants to call me on it, he can. I have Adebayo today at 48.1 compared to Stokastic's 43.7. I think he looks like a really strong play. That said, the total's low. The money line is low. Like everything is red for traditional formatting of my sheet because this is not a good spot for Miami. They don't have a high total. It doesn't look great, but somebody's got to score here. And Rozier, it doesn't seem like he's done it historically. Jaquez is going to get a lot of minutes. There's not a lot of options here besides Duncan Robinson getting going, and that doesn't happen anymore. So Hero and Bam are bust for me on the Miami side.
So I'm with you on both of those guys. I have 40% of Hero right now. Looks great. I mean, no Jimmy around really just changes it up. I mean, this is going to be not a fun day, although this could have been a lot worse for Tyler Hero if like Horford and Porzingis were still in, or Jaylen Brown for that matter, just because defensively this would have not gone well for Tyler Hero. For Bam, I'm right there with you. I liked him this morning when he was picking up like no ownership when Jimmy was in. I wasn't really getting to him, but I saw what was going to happen. Well, I got him now, 55% compared to 30% ownership. I don't have him projected for 57 fantasy points or whatever that number was. I have him at a crisp
48.1, a very respectable and reasonable 48.1. Josh will get you 91% exposure in the sim.
Yeah, I got 41.4 and it gets me 55%. So I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now.
You're low compared to Stokastic then, because they're at 43.7.
Yeah. Still getting them. Still getting them.
Okay. So I mean, no matter what, he's a good play then. You're getting him at the lowest amount. Stokastic has him at 32. I've got him at 90 with it coming a little bit higher. But I mean, like really, what's stopping Bam from hitting that ceiling when you have no Horford? Was it going to get stopped by Kata? Is Kata going to be the thing that keeps Bam from having a 19 and 12 day with 5 assists?
I would just go with his offensive ability will keep him from doing that.
Bam's, he's trying. He's 50% true shooting on the year, not the best, but take some threes now.
Points prop, 18 and a half. Not looking great. Not looking great.
Well, let's take the over. Hammer the over.
Or the under, depending on what you want to do. I think the real question is like, who the hell else is playing here? Like, how do you feel about Highsmith, Robinson, Hawkes, Larson, Burks, Drew Smith, I guess is a name I could say out loud. Hell, even Rozier, who probably plays 30 today.
Yeah, I think they all look okay. I have them all being over a 5x value, so like I'm okay with them. I'm actually higher on Rozier by a little bit, 27.1 compared to Kasic's 26.4. That said, only got him in 15% of lineups, so not like a big stand compared to my hero Adebayo stands. Duncan Robinson getting him about 10% compared to 7 for the field. That's fine. Hawkes getting 17 compared to the field's 15, so higher on him. Smith getting 9 and change compared to the field 7. I'm above on all of them, so I am kind of just taking the bet on Miami here. There's just so many opportunities left behind by Butler not being there. I like Miami a lot. I think there's a lot of ways to go, and certainly there is a revenge narrative for Rozier too that somebody in the chat is pointing out. If you want to highlight that, I'm sure he's so sad to be in Miami now instead of Boston.
Yeah, my only problem with Miami is like I have no trust of who gets the minutes. Like I assume somebody plays 30 that I like in the Robinson, Hawkes, Larson, Burks camp, and I don't know who that's going to be. And then that's what makes it kind of difficult. Like first glance, immediately, I think everybody is probably looking at it like, oh well, Jaime Hawkes is a fantastic play, and it's like, well, maybe. I mean, they haven't seemed to want to unlock him in any way from a playing time perspective. I have no idea like what they want to do with him, how many minutes they want to give him. Do they want to just give them to some other rando that they have that I can't picture? Maybe it's Larson that gets that giant jump. We've seen him jump up in minutes recently. He's terrible per minute, but that's sort of our saving grace. Like Rozier's not really a great per minute guy for what you would picture Terry Rozier being. Haywood Highsmith is terrible per minute. Duncan Robinson's not very good per minute. Hawkes is fine. He's going to be in that like zero point 0.9 range. Larson's terrible. Burks is pretty terrible per minute. Drew Smith, if he's playing, is pretty terrible. Thomas Bryant, I guess, is probably the backup center. That won't matter today, or at least shouldn't matter today. So it's a weird spot where like I just look at Miami and I look at Hero and I look at Bam and I'm like, yep, those are going to be the guys. The rest of these guys are going to randomly end up in some stuff, but I have no confidence in Rozier, Highsmith, Robinson, Hawkes, Larson, Burks.
It seems like Highsmith, Stokastic giving the most minutes to, and I know you said this on the strategy show as well, that Highsmith's reason for being is raison d'etre for being on the Heat is just to guard some wings and be able to provide some length out there. So pretty much no matter what you're getting from Boston today, he's going to have to be out there playing defense. So they have him at 28.8 minutes. I think that's right. But even with him getting 28.8, I have him as a 20-point projection, which is not that exciting either. So I think just getting a little bit more than the field of all these guys feels right. But to me, it just comes down to Miami's going to be in this game deep into the fourth quarter. I think Bam and Hero, at least one of them has like an outlier game. And because everything else here is just kind of flotsam. And Rozier too, like I'm surprised he just doesn't pop more, but he just hasn't done a whole lot. I mean, his Heat stint when everybody else is out.
No, it's been rough sledding for Terry Rozier. Not looking great. But Miami would like that pick back. And then we get to Boston, which is even less fun to talk about, I guess. So for Boston, Drew Holiday out, Al Horford out, Kristaps Porzingis out, Tatum in, White in, Hauser out, Jaylen Brown still questionable. So prior to the Hauser news, we had about 30% ownership coming into Tatum across both sites. We got about 15 to 20 to Jaylen Brown across both sites. Around 10 for Derek White across both sites. Peyton Pritchard was 15 on DraftKings, about 10 on FanDuel. And then no one else was really getting any love. So now that we know that Tatum and White are in, how did you feel about Tatum before we got all of this news?
I was getting more than the field of Tatum, was getting him about 36% compared to the field's 29. So I'm okay with that. Hauser being out, I don't think does anything for me, but if we do get the Brown being out hammer, Tatum would have likely been substantially higher owned. So I think getting him now being above the field at the current number feels good, especially if this were to drag out a little bit longer, closer to lock. I think that just playing more Tatum seems like a good move. But I'm getting a lot of all these guys. Did not rerun things with Hauser out, but did just update the projections. So I'm getting 36% Tatum, 25% Brown, I was already getting 23% Peyton Pritchard. It seems like Pritchard is the big minutes winner from the update from taking Hauser out in the Stokastic minutes. So Pritchard, I'm going to get more of. Was already above on him. I was already above on these guys. Hauser being out is going to make me get more above on him, and I guess it makes Jaden Springer a fringe value play for me, but that feels pretty flighty at 13 minutes.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about who the extra people end up being today
Mhm.
because they're definitely working their way into a crop of guys that don't normally participate for the Boston Celtics, whether that's God, I don't even know their names off the top of the head. Springer, Jordan Walsh, Drew Peterson, Tillman's going to play today. Baylor Shireman's around. I guess he could conceivably end up on the floor if they need him to. I can't, in good conscience, be interested in any of these Boston guys that aren't the common guys because I have no idea if they'll play, how much they'll play. The real problem with today's slate, and like I've seen it throughout chat so far about, when the game goes this way, when the game goes that way. Every one of these lines is basically the same, at least prior to the show starting. 8.5, 8.5, 8, and 7.5. Whatever you think for one of these games, it's the same thought across the board. If you think Boston's just going to be blowing out Miami, then I hope you also think that Atlanta, Chicago, and Minnesota are blowing out the Pelicans, the Nets, and the Lakers, because that's exactly what the betting markets are telling us right now, which is not fun for everything that we're trying to do right now. But I think Tatum looks great. He was the guy that I was getting the most prior to this news. I can't see any scenario where that goes down at this point now with no Hauser and potentially no Jaylen Brown. I actually was getting 20% of Jaylen Brown, so I kind of want to still see him in. I'm getting 20% of Peyton Pritchard. I like that. I don't have any Derek White right now, which admittedly scares me. Maybe that ends up looking a little bit different after Hauser, after adjusting some usage rates. But as I look at it right now, I don't think I'm getting to any of these like value pieces from Boston. Cornette doesn't look great to me. I think the only way that I would be doing that is if he happens to start instead of Kada. I don't really have that much interest in Kada, although I will say that he totally looks like a reasonable like 10% type guy. Tillman, Walsh, Peterson, Springer. I'd be very surprised if I get any of these guys.
I could see getting some Springer because he's been producing pretty well on the year. I assume not a lot of minutes, playing only 3.5 per game when he's played this year, but 1.08 fantasy points a minute, rebounding at a 16% clip, assisting on a 19% clip, usage of 20. But that's like on a slate because there's no, like, we have one 3K guy who's going to be owned that we haven't talked about yet, and Day'Ron Sharp. I could see getting some Springer as sort of leverage against that. But I'm with you. Like, it's the core guys for me. I'm above the field in the core guys before the Hauser news. I assume I'll be even more above the field than the core guys without it. And if somehow Jaylen Brown gets rolled out, then that stand's going to look even better. So that's basically how I'm playing it right now.
It feels like he's going to be out, but I don't know. Has the line moved at all? What are we
Like,
sitting
weirder
at now?
things have happened in the NBA this year. So I would assume he's out if these other guys have been confirmed in and
Oh,
he's still not.
so I'll say that, well, his is an illness. So I'm thinking they just want to
Uh,
see him warm up first and see how he feels. The line is now 9.5,
right.
which is spot on where I have the line with him in. So I think the line is either going to move at like a point and a half or at least a point towards Miami, or Jaylen Brown is just going to play. I now think this line is actually correct. So I actually think we're going to get Jaylen Brown in, at least as of right now.
But it just moved a point within the hour and nothing. Is that just the tax for White being confirmed in and Tatum being
I think
confirmed
so.
in? Okay.
I think so.
That makes sense then.
Yeah. Because I got this one on the nose. I have 9.5, no rounding. Line is 9.5 right now. I got the total on the nose too, 219.5. I got 220 on the dot. So I'm feeling pretty good about Jaylen Brown being in. But if he's not in, one, we're gonna know it before lock, at least hopefully. And two, the line will move. So that's where we stand on Boston. I thought this was gonna unlock something more. I actually thought two of these guys were gonna end up out, but I guess technically Drew is already out. But I mean, they're missing Drew Holiday, Sam Hauser, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford. That's four of their main dudes. That's a pretty big. It's crazy. Like, I get it. I understand Jimmy Butler is out too. Boston missing four of their rotation pieces and still being 9-point favorites is just a testament of how good these dudes are.
Yeah, I mean, like I got to say, Pritchard took a big leap up for me. I have him at 31.6, and I think Stokastic's previous projection was 27.9. So I think him getting a few more minutes here, like now he's projected for 33.8 by them, by the Stokastic data team. I think he's the one that's benefiting from everything here, and everybody else just doesn't produce at a good enough rate to really matter.
Yeah, he's looking good. I would fully expect to be getting a little bit more of him on my next run now that Hauser isn't in. I made the swaps for minutes, but I didn't touch any rates or anything yet. Anything else you want to touch on here for Boston? I really don't want to watch this game.
I think I don't mind anybody in Boston really. The big stands seem kind of obvious, but Peyton Pritchard's the one I do expect to take a pretty big run up the ownership and all of that when everything gets rerun and when you run your sims compared to what people do before.
Alrighty, folks. It's about that time to have the conversation that I know everybody wants to have. It's the hit the like button conversation. But there's a conversation after that that I believe you guys will find a little bit more interesting because we've had a deal going on for a bit. We had the Black Friday deal throughout last week, through the weekend. It's gone. Now, Cyber Monday season. The promo code is Cyber24. You will get 50% off your first payment on any light package that we have for any single sport. So that'll still get you your projections and ownership. It'll get you some access to our sim tools. It's just not as elaborate as our full package. Still get access to our premium Discord. This is the heat. This is the height of our deals. We got through Black Friday. We've got this Cyber Monday deal now for 50% off. We're not going to have any deals like this for the near future unless we get more subs winning millies on the weekends and we run that on the NFL side. But for right now, you are in the best time possible to get a deal at Stokastic, come in behind the paywall and see what we have. Because Wednesday, when this deal runs out, you're not going to be seeing 50% offs and crazy numbers like that on our packages for a bit because this is what we got you here for. We want you guys to come in now and check and see what we have when we're offering these big deals. So use the promo code, click the link, Cyber24, one big word, CYBER, the number 2, the number 4. Brandon Ingram, still no news, apparently? Correct.
That tease.
Herb Jones, though, officially out.
You. Yeah.
You're going to cyber with me?
No, Brandon Ingram won't, unfortunately. He'd be able to,
No.
yeah.
I wouldn't even have to say if Brandon Ingram just came home, I could just go hang out with him at his house in like an hour. He is not far from me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a local boy for me. He's a local boy for me.
I like him. I like his fractional Kevin Durant game, and I hope one day he finds his ceiling outcome in the NBA.
Yeah, he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that.
He could be an Orlando guy. No, he can't be. He would ruin Paolo and Franz.
No, it's tough. The way he wants to play is if he's the best player on the team, but if he's the best player on the team, you're probably going to qualify for the play-in. Hopefully.
Makes me sad.
I like what he does, but like his skill set is just like the toughest one to scale up. Because when you end up being like the 20th best version of whatever you need that to be, that just means you're the 20th best version out of 32 teams, and that usually sucks. It's a shame. But shout out to Kinston. Shout out to Chef and the Farmer. Great restaurant. Should not exist where it does. In the middle of nowhere, in a town no one should go to. Fun to stay there, though. They have a converted bank that you can sleep in. That's kind of fun.
Oh, that's some weird North Carolina shit, man.
Yeah, you go into the vault to get like beers and like coffees and stuff.
That's fun.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird that it exists.
I once went to a dive bar in New York that was behind an ATM. Like you pull an ATM and it leads you into a special door. And like
that's fun.
It's like the Money Bar in New York. It's got some name like that.
I saw one on a TV show recently where you like pull one of the cigarette lighters or the cigarette machine things, and that one unlocks the door to the speakeasy or whatever. I love that kind of shit.
It's cool. It's so gimmicky sometimes, but it's fun.
The Brooklyn Nets are 8-point dogs in Chicago, 232 total. This is the highest total and fastest pace that I have documented. This game is next level dog shit. Chicago is atrocious defensively, and Brooklyn is missing a lot of the dudes that actually have a pulse for this team. Bojan Bogdanovic out, Noah Clowney out, Dorian Finney-Smith out, Jalen Martin, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas, Zaire Williams all out. Q tag on Cam Johnson, which is the final remaining positive player for the Brooklyn Nets. But that doesn't mean shit when it comes to DFS. 35% ownership coming in to Dennis Schroeder on DraftKings, 35 to Cam Johnson, and we don't even know if he's playing, 20 to Jalen Wilson, 20 to Nick Claxton, 70 to Keon Johnson, 10 more for Shake Milton, 20 more for Trendon Watford, 15 for Day'Ron Sharpe. He hasn't even played yet this year. We still have 5% coming into Tyrese Martin, Dariq Whitehead on the outside looking in with a crisp 0. I have no idea where to start. At least for this conversation, let's assume Cam Johnson is playing. If he's not playing, everything we say about every one of these guys is just better than what it was if Cam Johnson was playing. But they're all already in play. Who do you like the most?
The guy I like the most, I really don't like him, is Keon Johnson. He was the worst on Friday because he has never looked for his shot more. He's never done anything. On the day that Tyrese Martin is a chalk, Tyrese Martin just was standing in the corner as a little cuck, just watching Keon Johnson get up shot after shot. And he actually makes them too. He's awful and he's just making every shot. I hate watching him play. He's one of my least favorite players to watch in the NBA currently. He looks like a crappy guard version of James Johnson out there with his tats up to his neck. Not a fan, but he is decent and chalk here on the slate, projected to get 28.5 minutes over the weekend. He kind of iced Tyrese Martin in the rotation, it seemed, where Keon Johnson, first guy off the bench coming in. Martin barely played in the first half, played in the second half a little bit. So Keon Johnson is your guy who absorbs the minutes. He's an okay play. If he were to put up 15 today, it wouldn't shock me because he's not actually good. But if you're going to give him 28.5 minutes, he'll get you some steals potentially, hopefully a few rebounds. He will put up awful wing threes, more than you probably want him to, averaging 11.5 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. That's what you're getting for Keon Johnson. So that's that. Yeah, how do you feel about Keon Johnson before he I think I threw a lot of spice out there. I hate him. He really upset me with the Tyrese Martin thing. Tyrese Martin at least looks like a legit player. Keon Johnson just looks like every NBA prospect's like hopes and dreams and is getting too much usage he doesn't actually deserve. I hated it.
How much did you say you had of him?
I had said like fucking one share of Keon Johnson and 95% Tyrese Martin.
No. Today.
Oh, today I have 66 today. On Friday, though, that was just to give people the color. That was where I was
Gotcha.
when I hated him so much.
Why do you dislike him so much, I guess? I got 70%. You don't get on my level?
No, I mean, I'm with you. Like, he's 67.5 for the field. I got 66. I'm just going to play it as it is. Like, it is. I'll take whatever Keon I get. He does a little bit of everything. I get it. But like 0.74 fantasy points a minute on the year. He's not shooting well, 47% true shooting. It feels like at a certain point, a coach should give him the hook and be like, dude, why are you shooting this much? You're not good at it. But they're not doing that. So that's fundamentally my issue with him is like, I think there are guys that can at least like run a functional offense and take some shots. And instead it just becomes the Keon Johnson bad shot vortex. And I don't know if that pays off necessarily in fantasy because it doesn't do a lot of other things.
Well, he is my most exposed player. I fully anticipate him to be the most exposed player. Point guard, shooting guard eligible, 3,500. Hard to get away from when that laundry list of out guys on the injury report came out. So that is my most exposed guy. My second most exposed guy right now will not take a lot of discussion. That would be Cam Johnson. He's in half my stuff, 6,600 on DraftKings, small forward, power forward eligible. The only actual decent player on the Brooklyn Nets. I don't mind at all having him in half of my lineups. So I assume he won't play to make it worse.
My second highest exposed guy is actually Day'Ron Sharpe at the minimum salary.
Okay.
I don't feel great about it. I
No.
agree with what you said. It's his first game of the year. He's projected for 15.3 minutes by Stokastic. I don't know if he's going to get that 15. But did average 1.25 fantasy points per minute last year. So I'm taking that shot. I'm low on Cam Johnson. I'm getting 15% of him.
Okay.
Getting a good amount of Schroeder, but still not with the field on him either, getting 29%. I feel like I'm getting the flotsam guys as opposed to the key guys where you kind of want Schroeder the most in this matchup, I would think. I might try to juice that because I do think it's a good spot for Schroeder. Cam Johnson, I'm low on, and I'm high on Day'Ron, and there are too many Nets in every lineup, it feels like.
Yeah, so I've got 35% of Schroeder, so I'm right there with the field. He looks good, 7,100. He's just, he's Dennis Schroeder. It should look pretty good against Chicago, so I'm happy to be with the field there. The guy that I actually have the third most behind Keon Johnson and Cam Johnson is not Dennis Schroeder. It is 45% of $4,400 power forward center Trendon Watford, who I don't hate it. He's like a fantasy point per minute guy. He's at least been playing recently, which helps. Feels like, no Ben Simmons around, no Dorian Finney-Smith around, no Noah Clowney around. I feel pretty good about Watford. I only gave him 22 minutes. I don't think that's crazy. And I also have 25% of your boy, Day'Ron Sharpe. I'm a minute light too. I only have 14 minutes, but flat 3K center, really good per minute guy when he's out there. I have absolutely no idea how many minutes this dude is going to be able to play today as he makes his debut, but 14 feels like it's in the cards. If you can't play 14, you're probably still on the injury report, is my guess. So I hope he gets to 14 because I like the value there. But I have everybody. I got 10% of Jalen Williams, 10% of Nick Claxton, 10% of Shake Milton. Like every one of these guys except for Tyrese Martin and Dariq Whitehead are in my lineups at this moment. And those numbers might just go up if Cam Johnson happens to be out. But if he's in, it's my second favorite net.
Yeah, I'm low on Cam, high on everything else you said. I'm above on pretty much all of these guys besides Dennis Schroeder. So yeah, Dennis Schroeder, Cam Johnson, I'm getting the least of, but I certainly think they should be the ones. I get why the ownership's going there. But yeah, just value all over and 15 minutes of Day'Ron Sharpe. What if he plays 20, he wins the slate? Is I feel about Day'Ron Sharpe.
Yeah, it's oh my God, it's just so gross. The problem for all of it is how good of a matchup this is for Brooklyn. That's what's really unlocking this Brooklyn Nets awfulness. They gain, based on my data, 3.5 possessions over their average pace. That is about as big as it can be in a given matchup. So I'm excited to see that because Chicago plays hella quick and their defense is as bad as it gets. Just looking quickly at dunks and threes. Chicago's defensive rating is 29th. The only team worse than them is the Washington Wizards, so not exactly the company that you should be trying to keep. The Bulls are also number one in pace, 105 possessions per 105 per 100 possessions is kind of nuts. Brooklyn is dead last in pace on dunks and threes. So the number 30 team in pace is getting a date with the number one team in pace. That is also the second worst defense. There is no better script other than I guess you can say Washington, but either one of them, Wizards, Bulls, whoever's playing those guys on every slate immediately gets gigantic improvements with no adjustments to anything. They just naturally become better. They all gain like a point and a half, up to 2 points, depending on who they are, just by playing them. And we're seeing that happen here for Brooklyn because we're getting all of it. Is there anybody you don't want from Brooklyn besides Dariq Whitehead, I'm guessing?
Shake Milton's the one I have the biggest no stand on. Only got 2% of him. And even that one I feel kind of weird about because I think if Keon Johnson were to fail, it'd be because somebody else kind of vortex some shots away from him. And Shake Milton is starting to kind of shoot a little bit more after being a low usage guy. So far on the year, only a 13.6% usage. But he's a guy that can fill it up, or at least historically has been able to. So I think Shake's the one I'm lowest on, and he could be your tournament winner because everybody will probably be low on him relative to all those other nets you're getting out the ass, like quite literally.
He's the one guy that like scares me a little bit that could easily just fall into minutes that I don't have projected. I don't like it. Like what? There's no difference between playing Shake Milton and playing basically any other guy that we just talked about.
Yeah,
like they're all bad.
The weird thing with the Nets is like, so again, I watched that entire Friday game because I'm just like, Josh knows I like watching shitty basketball, especially when it's like it's tied to my money. I just want to see what happens. They had like Jalen Wilson playing point guard in that game, and there was no Schroeder in that one as well. They had Jalen Wilson playing it. Watford was playing point guard for a while. Like it was really weird. Who's out?
We just got a piece of news, and we were about to talk about it. Kobe White out.
Oh, okay, that's pretty big too.
Oh, Rob Dillingham out. So the minute that I gave him of the 240 that I projected for Minnesota, I gave him one. I'm going to have to move that around now, unfortunately. That's a bummer.
No.
He was probably going to definitely not play like usual. Anything else you want to add here for Brooklyn before we talk about this Chicago team that has just changed?
No, play whatever nets you want. Follow your heart. It really is one of those things, like a mood ring. Play whatever net you want, and it speaks about who you are as a human being.
Well, we got the Chicago Bulls now on the opposite side here. Kobe White was not getting any ownership prior to this. We were getting 10% to Levine on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. We were getting about 20 to Vooch across both sites. We were getting about 15 to Dosunmu across both sites. And then we weren't really getting anything else for Giddey or, well, that's pretty much it. Jalen Smith, I guess, backup center. If you don't want to be playing Day'Ron Sharp, that could be the direction you want to go. But now we have no Kobe White. So my first question to you is going to be this. Who do you think starts?
Oh, it's interesting. Honestly, let me go back. I don't want to come up with this off the top of my head. Going back to the rotations last time. Let's see. Would think could could Lonzo start but not
No.
play a lot of minutes?
I mean, he played
Could
20 last time out, which is interesting, or 21, whatever.
could he play like first half and second
I
half?
mean, like, that's probably what they want to happen.
Because he played all the non-Kobe White minutes last time out.
Yeah. Um, I mean, he was his direct backup for the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he closed.
Yeah.
They didn't close with Giddey. They put Lonzo in. I'd be surprised if it's him, but it does make warming up easier, which is probably a bit of a benefit. You can still play him, 22 minutes if you want. Cam Johnson ruled out. It's fucking slate, man.
Just fun live before lock coming up next. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of data updates coming up.
Well, everything we just said for Brooklyn just increased the way that we liked everybody. Because nobody gets worse. Everybody gets better except for him. I like that Lonzo Ball shout. They could pretty easily go like 5-5-5-5 for him if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And just lock him in at 20, get him in at the beginning of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, beginning of the third, and then ice him to close in the fourth, potentially. Because I'd be surprised if he's playing like north of 24 minutes. That one would shock me. If it's not Lonzo, I mean, Buzelis played a first quarter rotation last time out, never saw the floor again. They don't really be stoked about Dalen Terry. I mean, I guess it's Torrey Craig probably makes the most sense to me.
That's what I was thinking. Just dust off Torrey Craig, give him whatever minutes he gets.
They were willing to do it for that one start in place of Patrick Williams, and then they just started to going to Dosunmu for, the fact that Torrey Craig's Torrey Craig. I could see it being Craig at this point in time. Alonso's interesting though. I like that shout. What do you like here for the Bulls though?
I mean, that's gonna move everything. I'm trying to play with rates a little bit to see what Kobe White would look like off, but need to get the minutes in. I think Vooch is gonna look a lot better if you apply the rates going back to last year. Looks like it's about only 371 possessions, so not where we want to be in court time without Kobe White, DeRozan, Caruso, like all the guys who were out for Chicago today. 1.47 fantasy points a minute in that core time without Vooch. 27% usage, 21% rebound rate, 19% assist rate. Got to knock that down a little bit, I think, but he's been historically a pretty big beneficiary. I think Vooch will look better overall for me, more time to distribute as well. And the usage that Kobe White has to go somewhere. Lonzo Ball would need to get more minutes, I think, to be playable, but he's averaging 0.94 fantasy points per minute. So if we knew he were starting, I think he'd become a play. But I imagine I'll get more Dosunmu when White's minutes are out, more Levine. I was already getting Dosunmu at 11%, so I'm going to get a lot more Dosunmu. But I think Vooch and Levine will look the best for me. Giddey, I don't know if he's going to take enough of a jump up to get there, really.
Yeah, I'm curious what he ends up doing. He got to 33 minutes 5 games ago. That one obviously didn't have Lonzo back yet. It's been 21, 26, 23, 24 since then. But if you're taking Kobe White off the floor, obviously you're not replacing Kobe White's shooting ability with Josh Giddey. But in terms of like running the offense, I mean, I got to give him like another minute or two, it feels like. It doesn't make me feel good in any way to be bumping him up. I don't trust it. I'm guessing that it's just like a bump to Dalen Terry, a bump to Julian Phillips, a bump to Torrey Craig, a bump to Buzelis, a bump to Taylor Horton Tucker, and then like everything just comes out in the wash. They just play all of the other shitty guys, an extra 4 minutes apiece, and then everybody is just playing like 14 to 18 minutes off the bench. Is how I'm like feeling it right now.
It's a deep rotation. Like, I mean, they have like 12 guys projected for minutes right now. If you take Kobe White out, still 11 or so. Yeah, so I'm with you on that. I think the biggest beneficiaries are kind of the lead dogs here are going to have guaranteed court time. And Dosunmu too, projected for 31.1 minutes. Probably gets closer to mid 30s, if I had to guess.
Yeah, he plays so hard defensively. I always get nervous bumping up guys like that minutes wise, but like I do feel like you're probably giving Levine, Dosunmu, Vooch probably all like an extra minute just by default.
Mm-hmm.
I just tried to update everything as quickly as I could to see if I have anything jumping out. I'll probably have to change some assist rates and stuff as well. Um, I mean, that takes Lonzo. Like I have Lonzo at 21. He's like clickable now,
Yeah,
which is scary.
okay. It's not a bad salary.
I'm just nervous about the right tail. How many minutes can he realistically play? Because I don't think it's just like, oh, a 20-minute guy can play 29 if it's going well. I don't think he has that ability, which it always gives me a little bit of pause. So I'm interested to see how that looks. Giddy does look a lot better now, just giving him a bump. I only took him up to 26 minutes, but he still looks pretty good to me. I was already getting Levine. I was already getting some Vooch. I was already getting some Dosunmu. Those things are just going to improve a bit. I think we have to have a little bit of a conversation right now about a $3,200 small forward named Talen Horton-Tucker.
How many minutes are you giving him?
I gave him 16. He's played 18, 16, 14, 14 the last 4 games. He's been playing since Lonzo got back in. Now there's no Kobe White. It seems like they've established him in that range. There's certainly enough minutes to go around where that number could go up. He's a fantasy point per minute guy when he plays. Small forward as well. I don't like the value that just created.
Yeah, he's averaging 1.14 on the year, which I have him at 1.02 today. But yeah, like I have him at about whatever the minutes projection is, plus a little bit more. So if you're gonna give him 18, 3,200, he's playable. He doesn't look as good as Keon Johnson does, I think, but it's not super far off.
Yeah. God, that's going to be interesting. Well, the fifth starter there is going to be important. If it's Ball, I don't think it's just like, oh my God, we got somebody. And if it's Torrey Craig, it's probably not the same thing either, just because he's so bad per minute. Like Lonzo's decent 0.9 type dude. We need that starting lineup, and we're probably not going to get that before lock. So get your swaps ready, people. Hell of a game. And obviously, make sure you're watching live before lock to deal with what the Brooklyn Nets look like now that Cam Johnson is out. We do not have time to circle back because now we need you guys to hit the like button. I still want you guys to sign up using the cyber promo. But we got to talk about Lakers and Minnesota, or at the very least, we're going to talk about Minnesota. The Lakers might be a little bit more difficult to talk about. No Jackson Hayes, no Bronny James, no Jared Vanderbilt, no Christian Wood. Q-Tag, Austin Reeves. Q-Tag, Cam Reddish. Q-Tag, my boy, Jalen Hood-Schifino, finally making an appearance for this team. There's really not much we could say here. There's no ownership really coming into the Lakers on DraftKings. 10 to AD, 10 to LeBron, single digits everywhere else. LeBron and AD are both in the 30s on FanDuel, which I think makes a lot more sense. Better position for AD, better pricing and position for LeBron. I just don't really know what we can say here with Cam Reddish and Reeves both being questionable. We are getting Russell back. He is probable now, but like we're going to need to see if Reeves and Reddish are out before we actually know what we can do with the Lakers. But do you like AD and LeBron regardless?
I like LeBron regardless. I think the price tag works for him. I actually got him in 15% of the sim before the show I ran. So obviously things are going to move around now. But I'm a little bit better projected than Stokastic does. I'm at 47.7 compared to 46.6. So it's probably a differential layer to get that extra ownership. A little bit low on AD, got 6% of him. Low on Connect, lower on Hachimura, lower on D'Angelo Russell by a little bit. All those guys look more appealing if we did get Reeves out. Kind of feel like based off the prop lines I was seeing, it seems like Reeves being out wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's hard to dissect this one truly because Reeves being out is going to open up everybody else here. But even then, it's like still probably not playing Max Christie, still probably not playing the lesser guys. It's just going to make Rui, Connect, and Russell look better. And obviously,
I'm just going to stop you right now. Just going to stop you. Not everything you're saying doesn't matter. Austin Reeves out, Russell in, Reddish in.
Okay, so there we go. So
yeah,
everybody looks better then, I think is it. But
yeah.
1 minute beneficiary, I feel like of the cheap guys probably not happening.
No. So now that we're losing Reeves, Dalton Connect looks a lot better than he did before officially. Cam Reddish is playable now because there's some minutes to go around. Max Christie is probably like someone you can get but not feel great about. I think this bumps up rates for LeBron, and he certainly looks a little bit better. I don't really think it matters too much for Anthony Davis, but incremental bumps just because you're taking off a guy in Reeves that does shoot, and you're replacing him with 100% guys that don't. So I like the bump for LeBron. I like the little bump for AD. This feels like a D'Angelo Russell day at 4,400 now with no Reeves. Do you think
Yeah, I
he
thought he looked
starts?
okay before too, but obviously going to look a lot better now with the usage to go around in a few more minutes.
So AD, LeBron, Rui, Connect, Russell, Reddish,
Yeah,
Vincent.
I think in that order roughly.
Okay, I'm intrigued to see who ends up getting that start. Because if we can get like 30 minutes out of D'Angelo Russell, he's the best play today at 4,400.
Yeah, I mean, well, Reeves was out yesterday, right? And then
Yeah,
it was
but
Gabe
so
starting.
was Reddish, so
Uh,
was Russell as well.
right. Okay. Hmm.
So it's tough to grab too much from that, kinda. Like, I mean, Russell played 29 minutes on the 26th. He's gonna look amazing. Like, even if you just take him up to 28 at 4,400, that's gonna be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I agree.
Connect already at 5K, so that's tough. 5,800 on FanDuel, that's pretty tough. I think it's just more focus on LeBron and AD. Little bit more focus on Rui, but nothing crazy. And then we kind of just need that starting lineup. On the off chance D'Angelo Russell is in that starting lineup today, he's going to look damn good. Then we get to Minnesota, a team that we can actually talk about because they're just themselves today. I don't care that Rob Dillingham is out. That meant nothing. They're going to play 8 dudes and 8 dudes only. 35% ownership on DraftKings for Mike Conley. It's 50 on FanDuel. 25 to Randall. It's 45 on FanDuel. 10 to Ant. 10 to Gobert. Gobert number is the same on FanDuel. Ant is 35. And we're also getting around 15% to Naz Reid. So what do you like here for Minnesota? The only team on today's slate where you actually feel confident about everything they're going to do.
Conley's minutes have been good, projected for 30.1 today. I think he looks like a nice play. 37.5% for the field. I got it at 42. Obviously, that's before all this stuff moving around. So Conley, still, I think a good value play who maybe gets muted by some of the other value plays. And I'll just say, like, he's one of those guys where he looked good before all this news came out. So if you kind of keep those guys in the lineup a little bit more, I think it's worth it. So Conley to be my stand here, my largest stand. Getting Naz Reid 25% as well. Really low on Randall for me. I just don't like the way the usage chopped up between him and Anthony Edwards, so I'm not there. I'd rather have Gobert ownership wise. I'm getting 11% Gobert, only 5% Randall. But to me, the biggest stands are Conley, Reed, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I was getting some of. I don't know if I'll keep getting him now, but that's
Yeah.
basically it.
Yeah, I got to 30% of Conley. I don't know how you don't. He's just fully established into these 30-minute games now. So his price is going to be in the 5Ks by next week, so long as he doesn't get hurt. I had 10% of Ant, 15 of Randall, so lighter on the field. I'm neutral to the field on Reed. No McDaniels, no Alexander Walker, no DiVincenzo. The only guy that I'm not getting, and I want to be getting to him, I wish I was like 2.5, 3x the field. Rudy Gobert 6,700 right now. He's 10% owned. This dude's playing 38 minutes a night right now. He's just not coming off the floor. And a lot of the problem here is the fact that he just can't catch or shoot. He's got like a 12% usage on this season, but last 5 games, 43 minutes, 37, 44, 34, 36. He's averaging 37 over his last 10. I'm intrigued by the minutes of Rudy Gobert. Don't really love the spot or anything, but it is interesting to me that he might just be out there for, 38 of the 48 minutes.
Yeah, I was getting Gobert a little bit above the field at 11%. He's been not good on the year, only 0.87 fantasy points per minute, so he's kind of getting a little bit ruined by Randall fantasy wise too, I think. But yeah, like I agree with you, Gobert. You talked about the strategy show, like center is kind of weak today, so you can live with Gobert on the slate.
Anything else you want to touch on before we dip on out of here?
No, I mean, I'm grateful. There's a lot of stuff breaking here. Didn't think it'd be this crazy. I feel like the Monday NBA slates usually seem pretty seamless compared to the NFL going on the same night, but there's value to be had. So I hope it works out well. And I appreciate being here with you, Josh, and Jordan producing the show as always.
Tell the people where to find you.
Oh, yeah, follow my at Splash Play NBA channel. I do a stream right before this one, 4 p.m. East Coast time every day, looking at my projections, comparing to stochastics, looking at ownership, prop markets, sims, and all that. So check that out. And Splash Play NFL too. Just go search out Splash Play and subscribe to everything and like everything and blah, blah, blah.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear. Cyber24 is the promo. Click it. Live before lock. Coming up next. 2,500 people in the door, and only 300 of you crazies hit the like button. The utter disrespect you guys are showing to Greg Ehrenberg. I don't mind the disrespect to Eric in any way. That makes perfect sense. But the disrespect you're showing to Greg, we just can't stand for it, guys. Hit that thumbs up. Make Greg feel better. And let them know when they get in the door, those thumbs up were Greg specific. Nothing for Eric. Good luck, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
About the self-checkout where he says I'm not an employee, I don't work here.
No, I think I vaguely remember that. Is that from Red Rocks?
Not sure.
I remember.
What is happening, everybody, and welcome to what has quickly become a messy NBA Live Before Lock, because as is usual, the deep dive ends, Live Before Lock starts, and in between, we get all kinds of injury news. We get weird starting lineups that are going to be coming out. We have no clue at least I have no, maybe Eric knows. I have no clue who the Nets are going to end up starting today. It could go in any direction, considering that you got all kinds of players out for the Nets, most notably Cam Johnson was just ruled out. You got D'Angelo Russell. He is going to be starting for the Lakers tonight because there's no Austin Reeves in there for them. So all kinds of mix-ups in different situations. Data team hard at work updating everything. And when that is all updated, I think we should just go through each of the situations one by one and show what our projections are showing, and then also what it is that the ownership is looking like and what it is we want to be getting to. Oh, by the way, we're not even done yet. Jaylen Brown is still questionable. Brandon Ingram is still questionable.
Yeah.
And those are two really important pieces to this 4-game slate. So if you guys can do us a favor while you're watching this, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. What is happening, Eric?
What is happening is a headache. There's no doubt about it. We got Brandon Ingram still questionable, right? Jaylen Brown questionable. You brought up a second ago here. We have different iterations of what that starting lineup could look like without him. I mean, this is just going to be a mess, but at least it's kind of a sprint slate. I mean, we've got every game starting within half an hour. We've got NFL coming up right after it. We're going to turn things over to NFL Live Before Lock. It's going to be a very, very eventful hour and a half here, hour and 45 minutes on the Stokastic YouTube channel. Let's party.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get to it. Also want to let you guys know before we get started here is that today, final call for our Thanksgiving / Black Friday / Cyber Monday sale for the Odd Shopper Portfolio EV tools. So if you guys want to go ahead and take advantage of it, last call. This deal is going to be expiring tonight at midnight. 75% off our Portfolio EV tools. I use them for all of my personal bets. I've been doing a bankroll building thread on Twitter where in a little bit over a month now, I have more than 4x the starting $100 bankroll, which the idea was to show that you could start with any bankroll amount and still grow it pretty reasonably using the tools that we have here. So $100, it's now over $400. We'll see that ends up being later on the season. If you guys want to sign up for these tools for yourself, link down below in the YouTube description box, promo code THANKS, 75% off. So less than $25 for really, really powerful betting tools. Highly recommend you guys check it out. Well worth the investment for less than $25. But right off the bat here, Eric, let's get to talking about DFS. And of the players who are still questionable, Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, are you going to be making any kind of considerations for Brandon Ingram as you build? Oh, actually, never mind. These guys are both in the first game of the entire slate.
Yeah.
So I should say, what is it that you are waiting on, if anything, from the later games that you might make some accommodations in your lineups for?
Brooklyn starting lineup. I think that's the main thing to be thinking about today. You look at where ownership is, Keon Johnson. I mean, 3,500, whether he comes off the bench or starts, he's going to look interesting. But Dennis Schroeder, 7,100, he'll be starting. It's just a question of like who you want to have be alongside him and who we want to take some tournament shots on. I think Tyrese Martin, probably pretty live to start. Jalen Wilson, he's been starting, even though it seems like they freaking hate that guy. And he only played 22 minutes yesterday against the Magic. Ended up being a lot of Keon Johnson off of the bench there. 32 minutes that we got from him. 20 minutes of Shake Milton, well at time to be alive. Trendon Watford, with that one, it's just so hard to think about what they're going to do. I think they probably have Jalen Wilson potentially come off the bench. I think that there's a lot of iterations where they decide to go that route. How do we feel about a Tyrese Martin starting? How do we feel about, Nicholas Claxton going up against Vooch? What do we see as far as like Patas Bazelis over on the other side with Chicago? I mean, there's some weird tournament shots to take on that entire game because of the pace of it. It's come down a little bit, 231.5, 232 basically. But I mean, that's just such an interesting spot. And we also got D'Angelo Russell starting already. So, I mean, there's a nice piece of value that's just going to jump way to the top of the board amongst those guys when we get our projections run. I got to assume he'll be the number 2 guy on this slate behind Keon Johnson at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely going to be how that Brooklyn starting lineup shows up. And then obviously waiting on that Ingram and Brown news.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I figure by the time that I run lineups and update everything, you can't really do our normal backloading lineup strategy that we like to do when there's only 4 games on the slate. Like, what are we going to do? We're going to ignore 50% of the games on the slate to try to optimize our flexibility for Nets lineup. So for me, I'm just going to run everything as is when we get the updates. And then after the slate locks at 7:30, if we don't get the net starting lineup until after then, I'm just going to run everything through the late swap tool and approach it that way. I don't really feel like there's anything I could do to maneuver my lineups to make them more flexible when it's only 4 games on the slate and 2 of them lock right at lock.
That's totally fair. Again, for me, it was the question posed and trying to think about it from like, all right, we are going to like, however, Jaylen Brown is starting. So I just saw that news come in at a different source that is not the main source. So I have it on good authority. Jaylen Brown is playing basketball today.
Yep. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and then Kata starting at center for the Celtics today. And I mean, what a pain in the ass the Celtics starting center situation has been this year for DFS, where you never know on a day-to-day basis who's going to be the guy, who's going to be playing the bigger minutes, and where's the production going to go. But for today, we only have Kata and Kornet in the mix, really. I mean, there's Xavier Tillman, but he's been a really minor part of the Celtics rotation. But Porzingis is out, Al Horford's out, Hauser's out. That kind of limits the Celtics' ability to play small. I feel better about the minutes for Kata than I normally do in these situations, Eric. And it's not even to say there haven't been times I've gone heavy on Kornet or Kata, because oftentimes you just have to go out and get yourself exposure to Celtics big men, especially on a slate like this of 4 games. But Kata and Kornet, I feel pretty good both of them play over 20 minutes. Do you?
Yes.
Let's see. Price points. We have Kata is at $4,200 today. Luke Kornet is at $3,900. Between the two of them, and once again, we're still waiting on some updates for our projected ownership here. But between Kata and Kornet, now that we know that Kata is going to be starting, how do you want to be approaching these guys in your lineups?
I mean, don't forget, it can flip on a dime. If Kornet comes out in those first couple of rotations, knock down shots, there's a world where he gets extra run. You have Xavier Tillman there as well. He's also $300 less than Kata is. It's Miami with Bam on the other side. And there's a lot of ways that I think you kind of just take shots on both of them. Kornet played yesterday all of 9 minutes. Kata did not play. So obviously Kata's been in bubble wrap for an extra day. Mm-hmm. I think he's definitely going to pull more ownership and be the guy that you want to get to more, but I would not be sleeping on Luke Kornet to take shots on as well. Don't forget Sam Hauser is out, and we know how much they want to get other shooters out on the floor to help him out. Xavier Tillman, he shoots 20% from threes, taking 15 threes, which is more than you'd expect this season. But Luke Kornet, that's kind of what you used to think it would do, like find some shooting. He hasn't even attempted a 3 this season. So there's ways that you take both of these guys, rotate through them. I mean, the ownership's going to dictate whether, Kornet is a play you want to get to, not more than Kata. Kata's with the starting number, you're definitely going to get to more of him. I don't really know what else to say other than Xavier Tillman is flat 3K with the multi-positionality. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put Jordan Walsh in terms of minutes of the ancillary pieces, but with Tatum and Brown both in, they're going to absorb so many minutes at the 3 and 4. I don't think I have to try to take shots on those kind of guys. Maybe Jaden Springer, doubt I get to him because of the other value like D'Angelo Russell on the slate. I'm just going to kind of let the ownership dictate what I do with those bigs on Boston and move on with that team. Brandon Ingram out, goody.
Brandon Ingram, he has now been ruled out. So Brandon Ingram, and there's injury notes we have to hit on for pretty much every single game. So let's consider Boston taken care of now that we've gone over the Boston situation and some of the potential value from the bigs. Now let's go and move to the other 7:30 game. We got the New Orleans Pelicans on the road against the Atlanta Hawks, and we just found out that there's going to be no Brandon Ingram tonight, Eric. So with Brandon Ingram out of the picture for the Hawks, Trey Murphy, he's back. We've got CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray in the mix. This team has also been an absolute train wreck. What is it that we're looking at from the New Orleans Pelicans? I think I know what you're going to answer.
Trey Murphy. Hi, Trey Murphy. I love Trey Murphy. You love Trey Murphy. We all love Trey Murphy. He's 6,200. He's going to be playing on the back-to-backs here. He got up to 40 and 38 minutes. He played 29 yesterday, but they got their teeth kicked in by the Knicks. It was hilarious. If you watched any of that game, it was over in the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes of that game, write it off. The Pelicans scored 10 points in the first quarter. 10. It was 33-10. It was hilarious stuff. So shout out them for packing it in. DeJounte Murray been one of the worst shooters in the NBA, but a very, very limited sample size on him, 4 games. So DeJounte Murray is going to look okay. He's playing here on this back-to-back, so shout out him for that. CJ McCollum as well, but Trey Murphy, because of the positionality, because of point guard D'Angelo Russell, because of Dennis Schroeder, because of Keon Johnson, I think you got to say Trey Murphy being the priority.
I see somebody bringing it up in the chat because we're going to be hitting on the Lakers next. DeJounte Murray, also somebody who you have to think that we're starting to see him play full minutes, especially because if the Pelicans don't start winning sometime in the near future, it's kind of a lost season for them.
They're 4-17. They're done. They're toast already.
They're close to it. I mean, you could still see them making a run and making their way into a play-in game or something like that. But either way, it's very much do or die time, which makes me think that in any kind of remotely competitive game, you're getting big minutes out of the core guys. And then you look at the last 3 games for DeJounte Murray, 25 minutes against the Raptors, but a blowout loss. 33 and a half minutes after that against the Memphis Grizzlies, then against the Knicks, 29 and a half minutes, another blowout loss. I think that there's a ceiling for DeJounte Murray to play 36, 37. Not saying it's the most likely outcome, but I think there's a ceiling for 36, 37 minutes, a competitive game out of DeJounte Murray.
Absolutely. He's definitely going to be somebody that I want to see the ownership where it lies on him. I also am paying attention to see, Javonte Green is who I think gets the start there. Try to just mine out some of the minutes. I'm working through this. He's 4,200 power forward. I doubt on this slate we're going to probably run into having to take shots on him. We have so many new Brooklyn Nets. We have D'Angelo Russell. Mm-hmm. Trey Murphy, 6,200 is just a smash at his point per minute rate. And, what he's going to do here without Brandon Ingram on the floor. DeJounte Murray, 8K, I do think is interesting. I think because of the shooting guard eligibility for McCollum, 7,400, maybe it's there. Maybe they go Brandon Boston and dust him off a little bit more. He did only play 19 minutes yesterday. I'm not sure. It's just still such a mess. It's going to get messier when you get Herb Jones back. It sounds like he'll be back next game. Jordan Hawkins back next game as well. Brandon Ingram hopefully back next game with this. It's like a tendonitis deal with him, but I think Murphy by a mile, Murray for tournaments based on ownership, McCollum based on ownership. I really don't think anything else on this slate. Elfrid Payton, I've always got my eye on because of what he can go out and do. He's kind of proved that. He's 4,500, but I don't think there's a world with both Murray and McCollum in that we would want to take shots on that.
Yeah, so let's go and look at the Lakers because we have the Lakers starting lineup, the starting 5 for the Lakers, which Eric talked about. We have D'Angelo Russell starting. It is Russell, Dalton Connect. By the way, my favorite nickname in the entire NBA, Connect 4. Awesome.
The best.
Dalton Connect did choose to be
also
number 4 coming out of the draft. So we got D'Lo, Dalton Connect, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. We know LeBron and AD are always going to be viable as pay-up options, Eric, but D'Lo really fell out of favor in the Lakers rotation, especially with JJ Redick, who was even vocal about it. He said that D'Angelo Russell just wasn't competing in a way that he thought gave him the best chance to win. So he got sent to a bench role. And then we've also seen his minutes be fairly limited coming off the bench. So didn't play last game, but then games before that, he's generally been anywhere from like 18 to 25 minutes. Now that he's back in the starting lineup, I do think we're going to see at the very least 100% effort out of D'Angelo Russell, which has not been the case in the past, because I think he has to view this as his way to get himself back in potentially in the starting lineup, or at least to gain himself favor in the rotation again. So I don't think effort is going to be a concern, but what should we expect from his minutes coming back from an injury?
It's hard because Gabe Vincent played 32 minutes yesterday. I'm a little bit surprised Gabe Vincent isn't just starting again here, and then you bring Russell off the bench and do the things that, I think he's more equipped to do. I also don't think you want Russell playing on ball that much anymore. LeBron James just being the distributor and being out there makes some sense, but no Reeves. I get it. It makes sense. It also wasn't an injury. It was an illness. He was sick for a couple of days. So I don't think there'll be crazy limitations. I put him in for 29 and a half minutes to start off. He's showing up in just about everything that I'm doing here at the moment. We'll get a projections update and see kind of where they land on this, but I think 29 and a half minutes is more than functional, and he's showing up in 80% of my stuff as is with that. So I find him to be pretty unavoidable. Is there a world where if he ends up 60, 70% that you trim that and you get yourself to more Peyton Pritchard, who is starting? We got that official starting lineup. Do we get to Keita? And then we just don't even have to land in the 4K range and fire up Russell? Sure. But he's still a pretty decent per minute performer. He's still going to command some usage there, even alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis. Starting against a team that basically said, we don't want you as well. That's kind of what every team has done with him besides Brooklyn, where he kind of left them at that point in time. But he's got a 20.6% usage. He's got a 24% assist rate, 5.5% rebound rate. I'm plugging through everything. I just don't see how you don't project him as one of the best point per dollar plays on the slate.
Yeah, and we do have all the projections updated. There was a ton of news for the data guys to be going through because of how much of it dropped all at once. But let's start here, Jordan, just because we're talking about it right now. Pull up our projections for the Lakers, and you'll see it's going to be really difficult to get away from D'Angelo Russell because even with a fairly conservative projection, we project him for under 30 minutes as a starting point guard. At $4,400, he projects for 27.5 fantasy points. You got D'Angelo Russell as a reasonably good fantasy producer. So to have him not show up in lineups, you'd have to project him for what, like 20 minutes or something like that. So I think this is a really good way to just see that, hey, at 29.5 minutes, we've got D'Angelo Russell at 27.5 fantasy points. All of this is really conservative, and that still has him coming up as one of the best overall points per dollar plays on the slate. So he looks really, really good. And then as far as the other peripheral players on the Lakers, yeah, like Dalton Connect, Rui Hachimura, they're both viable, but I'm not going to be prioritizing either of these guys considering how much value there is on the slate, Eric. The real priority from the Lakers, it's D'Lo.
It's D'Lo. It's disturbing. It's disgusting. It's whatever you want to say, but he's 4,400. I mean, I remember having long discussions when Dennis Schroeder was there playing playoff slates where D'Lo, it's like, he's starting, but he's 6,200 and, he's still going to be okay, yada, yada. We're talking 4,400 with very little sitting behind him that you have to be that worried about. I mean, Max Christie out there for defensive purposes. Cam Reddish out there for defensive purposes. They have really nobody else in terms of a backcourt. Gabe Vincent out there for, whatever purposes, whatever you want to say. Like D'Angelo Russell should be commanding the things that score you fantasy points, and you should be getting a majority of these minutes over those other two pieces based on the fact that it was a back-to-back. Gabe Vincent played 32 minutes last time out. It is what it is, but D'Lo is the best value play on the slate.
Yeah, that's how I'm seeing it right now as well. Some of the Nets guys also are looking extremely strong right now, but we also don't quite have that starting lineup yet. So we're just kind of making some educated guesses. So let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. And just because the Bulls, we've got a clear idea of what they're going to be doing without Kobe White. And then maybe by the time we're done talking about the Bulls, we'll have the Nets starting lineup because that game is going to be starting for the Nets in about an hour, taking on the Bulls. So on the Bulls now, no Kobe White in the mix. What does this mean for the minutes of Ayo Dosunmu and Josh Giddey? And are there any value plays you feel good about here? Or is it just going to be Giddey, Dosunmu, pick up Kobe White's minutes, and then it's just kind of dispersed across the bench?
Honestly, I don't feel good about any of them, even with Kobe White out. You get Lonzo Ball back in your lives. He played 22 minutes against Boston. I put him in for 20 minutes. I just don't know how I get to a ton of these guys relative to how much I like getting to Peyton Pritchard. I know he's 5,500 and it seems wild to say out loud, but like him and Derek White, I think at the shooting guard spot just look way better. I think Trey Murphy point per dollar looks better to me than a lot of those Bulls guys. And you get Brooklyn on the other side. It's an easy matchup in terms of spread. And the Bulls are the ones who really bring the pace. But I mean, is it that good of a spot going up against Brooklyn in terms of pace and putting up fantasy points? I don't really think so. I mean, Bulls are first in pace in the NBA here this season. Brooklyn is all the way down at dead last, 96.4 possessions per 48 minutes. That is not appealing in any way, shape, or form for the Bulls on the other side. I'm sure I'll get some mixed and match. I'm playing 50 lineups, playing like 5 in the second iteration of the $15 just small field stuff and trying to like work on some of my small field NBA stuff here on a short slate. I think that's more fun with NFL also building for that. I doubt I get to anything in a prominent amount. I guess my question is if Buzelis starts, I mean, I think there's a world where Buzelis starts. What kind of interest would you have in him at 3,300?
Yeah, I mean, clearly if he starts, then I would have to really significantly change how I am viewing him. But as of right now, I'm thinking they start Torrey Craig just because they've started in these situations earlier in the season. So right now I'm looking at Buzelis as somebody who maybe shows up in a couple lineups here or there, but more likely for me, I think that I'm going to end up prioritizing other value plays, especially from the Nets on the other side of the game. But yeah, if Buzella starts, then I would definitely want to be getting to him. He hasn't made any starts this year, correct?
I know he hasn't. I think this is kind of the time when you start to see them mixed in a little bit more. Again, it was kind of an unfortunate ankle roll. Torrey Craig was playing really good. I can't remember what that game that was. He was about to break the slate against, was that against Milwaukee? I can't remember, but it was a little bit ago. He dinged up his ankle, was out for a little bit of time. I don't know. Buzelis has started to get mixed into that rotation with Patrick Williams out a lot more. So no Kobe White, no Patrick Williams. I think there's a world against Brooklyn where you kind of like let him out there a little bit more. He's only a 0.84 fantasy point per minute guy on the season. Torrey Craig 0.88, but I mean, for me, it's just looking at the price tags and what I would want to have happen. And I think that now is when a rookie starts to get a little bit more integrated into a system. We've seen those minutes come up without Patrick Williams there. You've also seen spots like last time NBA Cup, he played all of 5 minutes against Boston. So there's some volatility there, but I mean, he's obviously performed decently well at times this season. And I wouldn't be shocked that against Brooklyn, this would be the kind of spot, a nice layup of a matchup. Obviously not in terms of fantasy, not in terms of pace, but like in terms of defense on the other side. I think this would be an easy spot to let him out there for his first start. So I think it's probably close to like 50-50 between him and Torrey Craig.
Yeah, we'll see. We should be getting that starting lineup in 30 minutes or so, something along those lines. And now let's go ahead and pull up the Brooklyn Nets and our projections there, Jordan, because the Brooklyn Nets, they have not very many active players today. Here are all of the guys that we've projected to be in the Nets rotation tonight. Dennis Schroeder, Nick Claxton, Keon Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Trendon Watford, Tyrese Martin, Shake Milton, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Derek Whitehead. So that's 9 total players and a lot of just absolute dog shit players as well. This is it's like a quadruple A team from baseball, like somewhere in between the minor leagues and an actual real team, because you got some players who belong here, like Dennis Schroeder and Nick Claxton. You got some young guys who maybe could be okay, and then it's a lot of guys who are not going to be in the league in 3 years. If you look at the Nets roster, and then we'll figure out who we actually want to play, is that if you look also right now at just our points per dollar projections, literally everybody looks viable from the Nets, just from a projection standpoint, other than Whitehead right now. How many of these players that the Nets have active today do you expect to be in the NBA in 3 years?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I expect Dennis Schroeder to be in the NBA. I expect Nicholas Claxton to be in the NBA. I expect... Well, now we're fucked. 2.5 NBA players over under. I'm probably taking the over because Jalen Wilson has some talent. But I really don't want to go beyond 3. So yeah, 2.5.
All right. So that is going to be the guess from you there, going with 2.5. I'll say, I mean, that's a fair line. I'm going to say 2 is the answer. I don't even know if Dennis Schroeder is going to be in the league in 2 years. He might be retired by then or something like that. So
stop it. Dennis Schroeder can play both sides of the floor. Like, Dennis Schroeder's a nice piece off the bench for a contender. That is not Brooklyn playing 40 minutes like he is tonight, but that also makes him one of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah, we will see what ends up happening in the future, where we're not going to remember this conversation anyway. But as far as Nets value for tonight, Dennis Schroeder, I mean, I guess he's still value, even though he's $7,100. Nick Claxton, the big question here is just how many minutes could he handle? Because if he plays a full allotment of minutes, he's going to look pretty good against the Bulls at $6K. What are you looking at as your favorite cheap guy to get to from the Nets, Eric?
It's got to be Keon Johnson, just based on what we've seen in the past. I mean, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, you look at yesterday, 32 minutes for him off the bench with a lot more pieces in. It was a brutal spot against Orlando, but you go from that, which is like your stone cold worst spot, to potentially the best going up against the Bulls. They lead the NBA in pace, 105 possessions per 48 minutes. Their adjusted defensive rating is second to last on dunks and threes. There is no ways around it. Keon Johnson with point guard, shooting guard. Again, everybody has point guard, shooting guard today, whether it's Pritchard, Schroeder. So I should probably even stop having that as a talking point. But I think Keon Johnson, 3,500 is the most interesting. I will say I'm very, very nervous about Jalen Wilson in every single way, shape, and form. His minutes have just been so volatile. And If he gets off to a good start, you're going to need him. If he doesn't get off to a good start, you're not going to want him. It is so hard to tell. He's played 41 minutes against Golden State recently. He's played 22 minutes yesterday. And with it being a back-to-back with some of these other pieces, I think I have to, I mean, it's so elementary to say like, oh, if he's popular, I'm going to fade him. If he's lower owned, I'm going to play lots of him. Like, it's really hard to tell where that ownership's going to be. What I will say is the guy that I think is probably the most sneaky is Tyrese Martin on this team. Tyrese Martin is cheap and like in a different kind of pricing place than just about everybody else. And he's 3,800 with just small forward. He played 28 minutes against Phoenix. And if you watched that game, Tyrese Martin was in fuego. It was really, really silly. He was pulling up from everywhere in Devin Booker's grill and just driving him berserk. Now, it's one game. He hasn't really been a big part of this rotation, but I will say, I think he's a sneaky guy to start. And because he's small forward only, and that puts him in fewer lineups, you can only play him small forward utility. I think he's probably going to end up being my favorite play relative to the ownership. I mean, I'm just looking at my lineups now that I just got the run and everything in. Keon Johnson's in everything. Dennis Schroeder's in a lot of it, over 70% of my lineups. But I'm definitely going to make way for the potential hopeful start of Tyrese Martin.
Well, we've got more news that just came in. I am never going to be able to kick a sim run off because more news breaks and then more news breaks as well. We just found out Jaime Jaquez Jr. starting in place of Jimmy Butler. So last year, it was kind of a foregone. And I see that we've got some super chats that have come in. I'm kind of waiting just until all the dust settles and I'm able to update my lineups to really appropriately be answering those questions when I know exactly who it is that's going to be my most rostered players. But Jaime Jaquez, I was saying last year, it was kind of a foregone conclusion when players were out for the Heat. Jaquez was going to end up starting. He's not really been a big part of the rotation to this point this season, but they're dusting him off. He's in the starting lineup with Jimmy Butler out again. Let's see. What is even the price point on Jaime Jaquez? Because I haven't put that. He's
4,300. I'm not going to want to play him. So it's up against Boston. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it's a back-to-back. He had that ankle injury. He was sick. He had a bunch of weird stuff early on this season. It's a back-to-back. If it wasn't a back-to-back, I would probably put him in for like a starter's allotment of minutes. But they've shown that they want to put Pelle Larsson out there. They've shown that they want to put, some minutes and some stock into Highsmith, who's starting alongside him. And with Rozier coming off the bench, I think that's just, it's almost like sometimes I'd prefer a guy like Jaquez could play himself into a larger role at like zero ownership. With him starting, we'll see where it lands at, but like, it's hard for me to go crazy with his minutes. The most he's played in a game this entire season is 33. Second to that is 27. Maybe we put him in at like 25, 26 minutes, but I'd be remiss. Oh, what the fuck? What are the Celtics? Come on. What is this Celtics lineup? We got the normal New Orleans one. Let's just go to the Celtics. What are we doing
All right,
here?
so now we got the Celtics lineup. By the way, Jaime Jaquez Jr., if he's fairly cheap on DraftKings today, as long as Jaquez plays 25 minutes, he's in play. And I also think he's live to play garbage time against the Celtics should the game get out of hand because he hasn't played all that many minutes. I don't think the ankle injury is that much of a concern at this point. It was about 3 weeks ago. So I think Jaquez should be good to play. It's just going to really depend on how well does he play for him to be getting full minutes. But here we go. Boston Celtics. Derek. Also, we had a Celtics lineup before that we went over, and we felt that we had some decent information to talk about. Are they just trying to give us content to talk about here? Because now it's Derek White. Okay. Jaylen Brown. Okay. Expected. Jason Tatum. Okay. Expected. Luke Cornett starting. So Kata no longer starting, even though it was initially announced he was going to be starting. And then Walsh. We have got, let's see, what are the numbers so far this year for Jordan Walsh? Because I also have not thought about him.
Hey, you guys. That's all I see when I see his picture.
Yeah, what is Jordan Wall? Okay, so he's barely played this year. He's not been a good fantasy producer. 8.5 minutes per game, 4.5 fantasy points. Last year, also not a great fantasy producer. All small sample sizes, though. We only played 9 games last year, played 9.5 minutes, 6.5 fantasy points. I can't imagine this is going to be a spot where we should be expecting very many fantasy points per minute for Jordan Walsh because he's not run with the starters before in the past. Now he's going to be playing with the starters. If this is a guy who is like a 0.6 fantasy point per minute producer playing with bench guys, I just don't think this is going to be a guy who projects all that well.
It's 3K flat.
There's a lot of guys who are 3K flat on this slate.
I know. I'm just trying to decide what to do with his minutes. Like, we've seen so many times that these minutes are just so volatile for whomever. Played 19 minutes against Atlanta in a blowout. I'm just going through Popcorn Machine and seeing a couple of these places where he's played more minutes compared to like the DK where it's listed there, trying to like mine anything out of it. I mean, obviously this is going to mute Peyton Pritchard. He still plays like 36 minutes off the bench in spots. I'm hoping that this reduces some ownership on Peyton Pritchard, because you always want to play Peyton Pritchard when nobody's playing him, and people were all going to play him if he started today, and you could be left holding the bag there, where he's sharing the floor a lot more of the time there with Brown, with Tatum, even though it would be more court time. But I mean, it's just dumb. I guess the priority, the guy, let's do it this way. Luke Cornett, 3,900, just smash him in.
Yeah, Cornett looks great. Cornett looks great now that he's confirmed starting. Kata's still viable off the bench. Jordan Walsh, I'm sure just because he's cheap, it's a 4-game slate, he'll make his way into a few lineups, but not really a real priority for me. I still think Pritchard's going to remain really popular. If you remember, there was a slate where Drew Holiday was out 2-ish weeks ago. Pritchard came off the bench. It was a bigger slate than 4 games, and he was still over 40% owned. So I still think he pulls ownership.
Okay. God, I'm just looking at my lineups here, and this is wild. I think we probably, just in terms of like what changed, I think Tatum and Brown look amazing, playing first rotations without Peyton Pritchard, who is literally out there to go and do his thing. Luke Cornett, 3,900, is the best value play now from Boston. It was Kata before. I'm not going to X out Kata and not get to a little bit. I'm surprised. I'm nervous about Kata's minutes purely because he didn't play yesterday and now he's not starting today. And you get on the other side of this one, Bam Adebayo. Bam looks better. Tyler Hero. I'm just kind of going through some of the Miami pieces that I'm going to have access to with Jaquez in that starting lineup. Good Lord Almighty. I'm just trying to update everything here at the same time. I think Derek White, obviously, for Boston, still looks awesome too. 6,800 for him from a tournament perspective. I'm not sure what to do with Walsh. I doubt I get to him when it's all said and done because of how much 3K, 4K value we have. But if he puts up 27-30, I'm obviously going to feel stupid in 28 minutes. But I just don't see how he gets to 28 minutes when you have Brown and Tatum out there and the way that they like to run their rotations. Like, I just don't think there's a ceiling on Jordan Walsh's minutes unless, for whatever godforsaken reason, he has like 6 stocks and just smashes that way.
All right, so let's go ahead and start answering some of your guys' questions here. And some of the questions specifically about ownership, we can definitely show. It's just been such a moving target for this slate where things are constantly in flux, where, we'll go over the ownership as we currently know it to be, but certainly is probably going to change a little bit based on stuff like the Celtics starting lineup and whatever the Nets starting lineup ends up being, which based on the way things are going, Eric, I assume the Nets starting lineup comes out right at 7:31 p.m. Eastern time, right after the first 2 games lock. Just an educated guess based on how things are going at the moment. But first, Eddie T 428I wants to know, who are the core plays for FanDuel? All right.
FanDuel's awesome today. Core plays. Claxton at center looks incredible, but I gotta say, Bam Adebayo looks way better. This is going to be fun for Bam Adebayo without Jimmy Butler on the floor. 8,400. It would be tough in terms of cash to decide if I wanted to play Claxton or Bam, but you're playing one of the two. Keon Johnson is incredible there, 4,100 no matter what happens there. Trendon Watford looks way better on FanDuel, 4,100 power forward center. You're playing him at power forward. I think DeJounte Murray, Dennis Schroeder, both of the guys you want to be playing at point guard here. Jalen Wilson probably gets a small forward, power forward spot. Jaime Jaquez is in play, 4,200 shooting guard, small forward. And I think Tyler Hero, not power forward, obviously, shooting guard eligible, 7,400 for him. Oh boy, does he look good there. I think on DK, he's very much in play, sitting at 7,500 and now 7,400 cheaper on FanDuel. Give me all of that you got.
Let's see. Last run of Sims. These are the players I got the most exposure to overall. A lot of Nets guys. Trenton Watford, Dennis Schroeder, Jalen Wilson, Keon Johnson. Best non-net as of right now, pretty clearly to me, DeJounte Murray. Bam Adebayo looks good when you consider that there's no Jimmy Butler and the Heat are shorthanded. So those are some of the guys that show up the most. But it's also, I mean, what is it, like 6 of my 8 most rostered players are coming from the Nets. So lots of exposure to that Brooklyn Nets team, which makes sense considering the price tag and that they're only going to be playing a short rotation where they normally have pretty much everybody on that team getting minutes. Next question here is from Isaiah Cousins. He wants to know, can we get DK ownership and favorite plays? Let's see if the ownership is updated for the Celtics starters.
37 seconds ago.
All right, there we go. All right, good timing. So yeah, we'll go and look at the most rostered players now from that game. Actually, let me make sure that that is taking. Yep, it is. Cornette, I assume, is the starter in our projections and in ownership now because he's pulling more ownership than Keita. But we right now have Keon Johnson, the chalk on the slate, 70% projected ownership going to him. Dennis Schroeder's at 60%. Then you got D'Lo at 43%. Trey Murphy's at 42%. Trent Watford's 33%. Bam's 31%. Hawk is now at 31% that he's starting. Those are all of your guys that are north of 30% owned. First glance at that ownership, Eric, is there anybody that looks too popular to you or somebody that you'd be nervous to play at that kind of ownership?
Mike Conley, 20% ownership. Mike Conley doesn't feel great.
Sorry, I meant of the guys that I just read.
Oh, that you just listed. Okay. No, I'm just kind of going through. I'm doing side by side and then looking at some of this other stuff. No, I really don't have a problem with anybody that you just listed off. I think Trenton Watford on DK at 4,400. Get your exposure to him on FanDuel 4,100. I don't think I'd get to this amount of him. We've got 16 minutes. I'll have plenty of time to run something else. I think Trenton Watford, probably the one guy where I just don't know what that starting lineup is right now. And for him to be in 35% of lineups, if he doesn't start, I don't think you want 35% of him. I think you want to get to whomever else it is.
If the Nets come out with a weird starting lineup, which, I mean, what do we put the odds on that happening?
100%.
75% chance that the Nets do something weird with their starting lineup. If the Nets do something goofy with the starting lineup, I want to be really underweight to the field on any chalk players who are not starting from the Nets.
As do I.
So we'll see. That starting lineup looks like it isn't going to come out until right after lock, considering we've only got 15 minutes to go until lock. But I am in the middle of starting to update some of my stuff now. So I want to let you guys know about a Cyber Monday deal that we have starting today. We did have the Black Friday deal, which just came to an end. But now, if you guys are looking to sign up for our light package, this is going to be a deal that's only available for the next few days. But if you guys didn't get in on our core or our max package, maybe the Sims aren't for you and you're somebody who you're just looking for player projections, you're just looking for ownership, maybe you play pick 'em a little bit too, check out our light package. It is 50% off the first payment. This is the most inexpensive package that we have here over at Stokastic. So any single sport light package, if you want to check it out for NBA, for NFL, this also includes our lineup generator, by the way. Sign up, promo code CYBER24, link down below in the YouTube description box. Get yourself 50% off your first payment. This could be for a weekly or for a monthly package of any of our light packages of your choosing. So let's go now, Eric, and get to the next question that we have. It is from Zevin711. Wants to know, who do we have for forwards on FanDuel? Who are your favorite overall forwards on the FanDuel side of things?
Trenton Watford, because I didn't bring him up on DK in that way. 4,100 still looks great. Anthony Davis, I love him. You should get to tons of him on FanDuel. Just get some raw points in your life when you have this much value. LeBron, so I could say him on the other side of that one too. Jalen Wilson, both sites, a little bit more on DK for me. Anybody else that I can't live without on FanDuel? I think that kind of covers it, like my must-haves.
You hit on something that I think is pretty important to this slate. We've had all this value open up. We've gone through all of the teams that are having that, which is kind of all of them. There's some sort of value situation in these spots now. Who are you going to prioritize spending up for with all this value, though?
Anthony Davis and Jason Tatum. Those are the two. Jason Tatum, 10-3, small forward, power forward. Anthony Davis at the center position. They both look epic on DK on FanDuel. Anthony Davis has power forward eligibility. That just makes life so much easier for you. I mean, those are the two for me. LeBron, I think, on a back-to-back, coming off of 36 minutes at altitude, 39 minutes for Anthony Davis at altitude, but I really don't care. I mean, they're going to just continue to ride him. I think you have to look at Trae Young a little bit too at 8,800 on DK, but I think the priorities for me, Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, give me the raw points.
Let's we could, Jordan, play the nuke of the night animation. We could do it for this as well. Let's just go to our favorite low owned tournament play. We'll make this the nuke of the night for today. I think there's a lot of interesting spots.
Hit the animation. We can do it. We got time.
Yeah. He's playing it.
Oh, there goes my cock.
Yep, it is gone. It has been blown off, blown to smithereens like an Acme character. Eric, we've got all of this value on the slate. We've got a handful of pay-up options. I think a lot of people are going to be building pretty similar lineups, right? A couple of the Trae Young, Anthony Edwards, LeBron, Jason Tatum, Anthony Davis, then a lot of the popular value plays mixed in. I want to know, for the nuke of the night, what are you doing to potentially set your lineups apart from the field?
I'm just going to play an absolute metric ton, apparently, of Jason Tatum at his current ownership. I don't see any way that I won't play more than the field of Anthony Davis and Jason Tatum, but Tatum specifically falls into more lineups, 10-3, small forward, power forward, following kind of Trey Murphy, who I obviously also like here in this spot. Anthony Davis is at the center position, but you have Bam, you have Vooch, you have, Nick Claxton, probably not Gobert for me, but I'm definitely looking at getting some raw points in my life. And Jason Tatum, it's a back-to-back here. He didn't play yesterday. I think that's such an important caveat because, yesterday you got Anthony Davis. You got 11 games going on tomorrow, but none of these teams, these four teams, I don't believe play in the NBA Cup tomorrow, which is why they're playing on back-to-backs here tonight. They got sandwiched with this ridiculous schedule that the NBA's parsed together and pretended they're actually trying. OKC and Phoenix with 6 and 7 days rest this early in the season is just stupid. Figure your shit out, NBA. But in the meantime, Jason Tatum didn't play basketball yesterday. I'm very excited to get to absolute metric tons. Wait, he did play basketball yesterday. I'm a liar. Didn't he play yesterday? He definitely played yesterday. Whatever. We're going to play Jason Tatum here, friends. Jason Tatum is the guy that I want to be getting to. Maybe some Jaylen Brown, too. I'm not sure if he ends up falling through the cracks here, but he's going to get all the usage and all the land. I'm excited about Jason Tatum with the positionality exclusively. That was a terrible segment by me. Jason Tatum, nuke of the night.
Yeah, totally butchered by you, especially because I asked you who's going to be your contrarian guy to differentiate your lineups. You went right with the most popular spend-up option on the entire slate.
Bam Adebayo is more popular.
And for reasons like he didn't play yesterday when he
Bam
did play yesterday.
Adebayo is more popular. You're a liar.
Bam's $8,100 and Jason Tatum is 30% owned at 10,300. All right, I'm giving Eric demerits for that. He could defend himself however the hell he decides to want.
Yeah, I suck.
But here's where I'm going to go, Eric, because I'm looking, where can I find somebody who I think presents actual upside that's cheap and the field isn't getting to? To me, the answer is Day'Ron Sharpe. And I'm not saying I want to play 50% or anything like that, but I'm just kind of looking at the Nets rotation, who they have available. Nick Claxton's been playing limited minutes for a while. This is the tail end of a back-to-back for the Nets. Nick Claxton, by the way, also punched Franz Wagner in the face the other day.
Sure did.
Which I thought he was going to end up getting suspended for this game. But I don't know. We haven't seen big minutes for Nick Claxton. They only have so many big men available. Day'Ron Sharpe, the most boom-bust player there's ever been in DFS. Day'Ron Sharpe, how many times over the last year was he just terrible as chalk, but then would come back and be unowned the next day and score a whole bunch of fantasy points? I think there's a scenario here where Day'Ron Sharpe plays mid-20 minutes, and that could be enough for him to score, honestly, 30-plus fantasy points. At low ownership, he's the flat min. So I'm going to make sure I get some Day'Ron Sharpe into my lineups. I think that's a reasonable way to be really contrarian while also having upside.
That is honestly my favorite play that you've given out all season long.
There we go.
I honestly think that so I deserve to be fired and you deserve a raise. So you should just take my salary for ever.
Deal.
That's cool. Congratulations. By the way, that is not binding. But Jalen Martin, I'm going to amend everything I just said. I'm going to get some Jalen Martin in my life here too. I think there's a chance that he ends up, or sorry, Tyrese Martin. I said the wrong guy. Tyrese Martin. God, I can't get the segment right at all. Tyrese Martin, Brooklyn. I want to give him a boost. Give me more Tyrese Martin. I'm done talking.
There we go. All right. Eric is quit talking temporarily. I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't know we could silence Eric, but we just ended up doing it.
I'm done. I was doing so well today. I was so prepared, and now I'm just a rusty trombone.
There was no way to really prepare for, like, how would we have known any of the things that were going to happen over the course of the time we're on the show?
I had ideas of where I thought starting lineups could go, and I had ideas how I wanted to get different with Brooklyn, and I had ideas. But I mean, now we have Jordan Walsh starting, and nothing is real, and time is imaginary.
There we go. So I am updating everything in the Sims right now and doing one more run here while this is going. Let's see what else we have for questions as well as super chats. 8 minutes to go until lock. We've got one here from Red John wants to know LeBron or Jalen Johnson for FanDuel. I prefer LeBron.
I prefer LeBron.
Goes to show, though, even the fact that this is a question goes to show how good Jalen Johnson has been this year, because there's no way on day one of the season, if you were asking people who would be a better fantasy producer this year, Jalen Johnson or LeBron, that it would even potentially be a conversation point. But yeah, LeBron James for me.
Awesome. I have tons of Jalen Johnson today.
The Discord questions now, and some of these coming through. This first one, it is from Einstein. He wants to know, is Drew Peterson in play? He's played more than Walsh in the most recent game. No. Let's not get too crazy here. Like, I thought Day'Ron Sharpe was a fairly crazy option to be going to here, but Drew Peterson, that's a little bit too far off the beaten path for myself.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Let's see what JEW has for us. He wants to know, who would be our DK single entry locks and max entry players you're over or under on? Yeah, so I mean, pretty clearly somebody I'm going to be overweight to that I mentioned before is Day'Ron Sharpe. How about locks? Anybody you consider a lock for single entry, Eric?
I don't believe in locks.
Even though it's a third of the title of your very popular betting video?
It's mainly just to be ironic, if anything. Let's see. I think Anthony Davis, somebody I'm going to be over on. Jason Tatum, somebody I'm going to be over on. I like Jalen Johnson more than 30%.
Okay.
So I'm going to the expensive guys, and then I'll figure out the value with Brooklyn. I have so much Brooklyn that it won't matter. That's the other reason I don't like Jaime Jaquez that much. It's a back-to-back. I think there's a cap on his minutes, and you have a ton of value in the 3K range that have to play big minutes for Brooklyn.
Yeah, so, I mean, once again, I have to see what it is that I get of Jaquez before I decide before I just say that I don't like him at all or anything like that.
Have a backbone. You don't like him.
Well, I don't want to say I don't like him and then build my lineups and find out that I have him in lineups or anything.
That would be a travesty. That seems like a personal problem.
Well, that's why we build the lineups and see what they end up looking like. Jaime Jaquez, are you not going to play him at all then?
I'm probably going to full fade him, if I'm being honest. I currently have 0% in 50 lineups. Yeah, 0.
Okay. All right.
Go me.
I'll play whatever shows up in the Sims after it's done running here right now, especially because there's only a few minutes to go and I'm only going to have so much time to really manipulate some stuff. But JEW, I would say for sure have Keon Johnson in your single entry lineup for now. And then if he doesn't start, pivot off of him because he ended up being overowned. Favorite pay-up option, I do agree with Eric. I think the top pay-up option on the slate, it's Jason Tatum, especially when you look at the other options that the Celtics have to go to for usage in that starting lineup. That's a big change with Walsh starting as opposed to somebody like Peyton Pritchard. That's a big change in usage in that starting lineup. So Tatum is my favorite pay-up option to be getting to. Let's see what we have for our next question. It is Rabashwood. Do we want to have any meaningful ownership to Day'Ron Sharpe and Whitehead on Brooklyn? Sharpe for me, yes. I had shouted him out before. Whitehead, no.
What you said.
Einsteinium wants to know, Haywood Highsmith, Heat's best perimeter defender, getting no ownership at $3,900. A mistake? It's not a mistake. He's not a very good fantasy producer, and it's a tough matchup. They're just better directions to go to.
Just go bet their stocks. Like, go bet their stocks rather than... Because, like, that's the only way that he is showing up optimal is he runs into a bunch of stocks or has the most outlier shooting performance in the history of mankind. You would have to pay me a lot of money to play Haywood Highsmith on this slate.
Boy, I just finished my lineups here, and it is more spread out than I was expecting it to be. I mean, other than Keon Johnson shows up in more than half my lineups. Beyond that right now, Eric, I thought D'Angelo Russell for sure would be somebody in like 60, 70% of lineups, but there's just so many value plays to get to that it just kind of got spread out in a decent way for me. I don't know. Is that the case for yourself as well?
Yeah, it's weird. But then I see things like fucking Shake Milton and I want to just hurt myself because that's basically what I'm doing. I have Tyrese Martin. I have Keon Johnson. I have Jalen Wilson. I have Dennis Schroeder. I have so many. And now Day'Ron Sharpe, so much of these Brooklyn net dudes that I'm just rotating between them. And yeah, it's more muted D'Angelo Russell exposure than what I was expecting for sure. I'm still getting to 60% of him, but I was expecting 100%.
Yeah, I have 43% of D'Angelo Russell.
Lovely.
43% is the number I ended up with. Let's see what other questions we have in the Discord channel. The next one here is from COVID Bryant II. He wants to know Keon or okay, so he's asking us Keon Johnson or Jalen Wilson, and he says price agnostic. So just pick one or the other. If it's price agnostic, then Jalen Wilson. He's quite a bit more expensive, though.
Facts.
He's also way, way lower owned. So
Facts.
As of right now, you know, this is going to potentially update depending on what the Nets starting lineup is. The two players who are not pulling a ton of ownership on the Nets that I'm overweight to, Day'Ron Sharpe, don't need to relitigate that again. And then Jalen Wilson, who's projected for sub 20% ownership at the moment.
Dude, I'm so mad that you came up with Day'Ron Sharpe and not me. I feel so disgusting right now.
Really quick, Pierre left us a super chat. Javonte Green, Jalen Wilson, or Trendon Watford over on FanDuel. Jalen Wilson for me.
Jalen Wilson.
Yeah, and then just that's assuming he ends up starting. So
correct.
Just be on the lookout for that starting lineup because it could be really anything for the
many
Nets.
things.
Let's do it before we wrap up, Eric, because we only got about 30 seconds left to go here. Because I haven't done yet. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We talked about it at the top of the show. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for our portfolio of e-tools, final call is tonight. Today is the absolute last day of that sale. Who is going to be the starting five for the Nets tonight?
Oh, Jesus. What a question to go out on. I'm going to go Dennis Schroeder.
Yep.
Keon Johnson.
Nick Claxton.
Nick Claxton for sure. It's not, I mean, Lord, then we have the Day'Ron Sharpe nuts. Jalen Wilson, I think, still starts. And I'll go Tyrese Martin as the wild card.
Yeah, I think he started the last time they were shorthanded, so I don't think it's that insane to think he starts again. I'll agree with you. I'll go the same five. Schroeder, Martin, Keon Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Nick Claxton. That is the official, unofficial guess for Eric and myself for the Nets starting stupid lineup for today, which I'm sure we got to lock. It has to be coming out in 30 seconds now. If you guys haven't done yet, one more time, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and stick around. We've got NFL Live Before Lock next, breaking down the Monday Night Football game. It is going to be Matt Kajeski and Lofty, so check those guys out. Good luck with your lineups, and be on the lookout for the Nets starting unit.